Welcome, welcome, welcome to this edition of Sagionic 1027. We are so glad that you decided to join us today. And
Yay.
with us, I have another one of those guests that are like, so I'm really eager for you to meet our guest today. Before I officially introduce you to her, I would like to share with you a little bit about our program. So the word Sagionic all by itself means movement by movement in human time. The word Sagion means carriers of wisdom. So our goal here at Sagionic 1027 is to interview the minds of carriers of wisdom because without unknowingly, they've walked out Sagionic movement by movement in human time. And so today I would like to introduce everybody to Lydia Fleming. She
Hello.
she is an actress here in the greater Portland region, Portland, Oregon region in United States. And she is also a music director, an extremely talented woman who is gifted on so many different levels with so many different things. And Lydia, we are so glad that you decided to join us today.
Thank you.
Yeah, and today's program is all about you. So if we think of, let's just start with go back and tell viewers at what age were you that little girl who was like la 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 la.
Oh goodness. I think I started wanting to be a part of performing arts at a very early age, even as far back as preschool. Which, if I'm honest, I don't even know what age that is. Is that like 2 or 3?
Yeah, yeah.
um, I even back then I was already taking ballet classes, already in like mini, tiny programs that they were doing there. And I just had such a love of not only performing on stage, but the community that gets created and the stories that get told. And I think it really started there, but I think it really, like, a fire was lit when I saw my church's dance program. They had some really amazing dancers, but not just that, like the emotion that was invoked when they would dance is just it left me speechless, and I was like, I want to be a part of that. So I think it started maybe when I was 2 or 3.
That's interesting you would say that because a couple of weeks back here in the Portland vicinity, we had an event called Day in the Park. And
Mm.
one of my dear friends is a flagger, and she actually made a bunch of flags for children. And so several of my grandchildren went up, and I watched them. And I thought for sure the grandchild that always is moving and dancing and singing, that she would be doing the same. Instead, as I watched her study the faces of those who were on stage. So that
Yeah.
would have been like you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So probably you didn't have to. Your mom didn't have to sign you up for lessons right away because you were probably already doing stuff around the house. On the. So can you go back and tell us what is your first memory of an encouraging voice that spoke into your life that fueled you?
Ooh. I think my first memory as far as performing arts would be my dance coach, Miss Kathy. She was always such a light in the entire class. Like uh, she was a part of our church,
Okay.
but how she would speak to me, it was just, I don't even know how to describe it. She was just so kind, and everything she said, it seemed to come from a genuine place. Where sometimes I'll admit, sometimes you're a kid, you're adorable, so people are just like, "Oh, you're so precious, you're doing so well," and it doesn't always strike as real because you could probably trip on stage and people would still clap. But
Yeah.
the way that Miss Kathy would not just call me out and say, "Hey, you need to do a little bit of strengthening here in these muscles. Hey, we need to work on your core." But also, like, you are doing well. These are the things that you're doing well in. And she would be excited to see not just all of her students, but also myself. Um, I think, yeah, that's the first one, Miss
That's
Kathy.
that's really powerful. So shout out to Miss Kathy. Yay! Uh,
Yay!
for the impact because our words are so vitally important. Okay. So if we think of words for a second, how would you share with viewers words that you chose to speak over yourself?
Mm. Whew. I will admit, sometimes I have a hard time like building myself up for myself. It sometimes comes off a little selfish, but I do use scriptures from the Bible. Um, Golly, is it John 1:14? I don't quote me. I'm terrible at quoting,
Don't even
but
worry about the address because I didn't pay attention to the numbers. I just paid attention to what it was saying.
it's the one that speaks on how God has a plan for you that is one to gosh, I can't even like quote it well, but it stays in my heart, and it means that God has a plan for you, just for you, and it is good, and it is something that's supposed to build you up. And so like I use that for whenever I'm feeling anxious, or whenever I'm like, oh, I don't know if I'm going anywhere, I don't know if maybe I'm doing the right thing, or shoot, there are times where I'm just stagnant and I'm just like, am I even doing anything? And I rest on that one. And the other one is when I'm feeling a little overwhelmed, is God will never give you anything that you can't handle, and He will always give you an out if you need it. And I rest on that one because it just gives me comfort to really like calm my nerves down and be like, okay, do I need an out? Because God will give me one if I ask, but also, do I need to kind of go through this to learn and to grow? Because, obviously, I sometimes the best things happen from difficult situations. So those two scriptures really kind of push me forward and motivate me to move and keep going.
That's really good. I think the verse you're talking about is God is always at work in you to will you according to his good purposes. So he's moving in you, or the other one is in Jeremiah. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you, not harm you, plans to give you a hope and a future.
That one. That one.
That's in Jeremiah. You know, when you were sharing, the thought that, or the scene, I want to call it a scene, that popped into my brain was creation. Okay, so let's think of creation for a second. If a child comes along and picks a flower, are all of the flowers in the garden going to say, well, we might as well not grow now because now our buddy's dead, right? Because somebody picked him, right?
Nope.
Or if a branch breaks off of a tree, we don't see creation say, well, I'm just washed up now because one of my favorite branches is gone, right? And I mean,
Yeah.
that's just being real if we really think about it, right? And so if we, you know, if there was no such thing as failure, right? Because of what you said, sometimes we
Mhm.
walk through things and we learn from them, right? Um, if there was no such thing as
Mhm.
failure, or if we checked out the back door, the fear of man, share with our viewers how you chose to adopt both of those, right? And share with viewers how you stepped into realms that maybe others were more experienced, right? Their name was
Mhm.
in highlight where your name wasn't yet, and how you stepped into that position in whether it be in the acting world or through music because you had spoke the words to yourself where you're like, Psh, I could do this.
Yeah. Ooh, gosh. That actually brings up one big major story, which I credit to being like a pivotal point in my life
Okay.
of when I was in high school. Obviously, I think I was a sophomore. Sophomore. I
Okay.
was a sophomore in high school. There were definitely a ton of talented, very talented seniors. And also, because they were seniors, they had seniority for all of the main roles in the show. Um, at that time, I wasn't sure that I was going to get a part because at that time I was very soft spoken, and while I had a fair amount of talent with singing. I could hit some wonderful notes. I had a decent range, but the extra oomph that you need to be kind of like a star role hadn't quite shown up yet. But there was a role there that, fun fact, it was Muzzy. The show is called Thoroughly Modern Millie. Um, and I really wanted the character of Muzzy because that character, she was just so vivacious and like just, she just was. I have no way of explaining why I wanted this character so much, especially when I remember that she's a mom and she's like naturally she's so much older than I was at that time, character wise, but I wanted that character. And I remember in that audition, I went up on the stage, they started playing the song, and I sang okay.
Okay.
And then I stopped myself. I paused for a minute. I was like, "Can I do that over again?" And thankfully, my teachers were so wonderful. They let me do it again. And I just remember gently praying to God, and I took the biggest breath that I could, and I sang it with the loudest emphasis that I could. And then the feeling came with it, and then the energy came with it. Everything came with that moment. And I think that was my that was my biggest turning point of changing not just my vocal style from being really pretty and it was cute, but it changed to being more authentic to who I am, and that I can speak up when I need to and when I want to. And that's I really accredit like the power that I have, not just when I'm singing loud but also when I'm singing soft. The emphasis
Mm-hmm.
and power and emotion comes to that moment. So I guess you could say, genuinely, I just pray. I kind of harnessed it a little bit and then let it out.
Mm. And you know what that makes me think of? Because I'm sure in life you've ran into people who say this dreadfully wrong, incorrect saying, "I can't sing." And yet, each human being's vocal box was, in essence, created to sing. And so, can you tell viewers how you chose to take the tone of your own voice, not the sounds of someone else, the tones of your own voice, and how you chose to train the instrument called Lydia's vocal box that she was given?
Ooh, okay. I will admit, for a large portion of my life, I was extremely blessed with well educated teachers
Okay.
who also could speak to me in a way that I understood. Um, so I'm not going to take any credit as far as like the early years of my life of training myself,
Okay.
because I was truly just blessed with some excellent and passionate teachers who knew their foundation, who genuinely, if they wanted to, they could be teaching for so much more money, but for some reason they were in public school and they were teaching foundations in a way that trained me enough to say that, yo, I can actually stand on my own vocal cords and do change them in a way that can fit a song and different songs and different sounds. And so I accredit them. Now, as far as right now, breathing,
Okay.
getting in touch with your breath, getting in touch with how you breathe, where you breathe. Do you need to breathe through the nose? I found that, especially with singing, breathing through your nose instead of your mouth, really anchors you, and it anchors you on the inside. It anchors your shoulders. It anchors your vocal cords. And then you can breathe and project out. It's all just breathing. And if you can regulate that and get in tune with that, you start to realize what muscles are starting to flex, what things and what's going on here. Are you singing from here? 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 Like learning what all of that sounds like, what it all feels like in your body. Really just sitting with your vocal cords and understanding what they feel like, learning how to isolate certain muscles, flex certain muscles, would be the biggest thing that I would say that I practice even today.
Okay. So you just taught me something I've never even heard. I've
Mhm.
never even heard. Okay. So watch. So even though I can say I've never heard of breathing through your nose, right? I do know that if you were to take a big water bottle and you were wanting to consume all 20 ounces at once, you can breathe through your nose while you're guzzling the water, right?
Mhm.
Which means you can use your voice while breathing. Okay, so now I'm going to have to try this. Because you just, I'm one of those sing in the public all the time to random, what somebody may classify as random strangers, but I classify it as designated appointments, right? Um,
Yes.
but I've never even thought of singing, breathing through the nose. That's just fascinating. Okay, so now we're going to go a little different angle. Okay,
Okay.
so tell me, because if we think of the acknowledgement of your teacher, right? If we think of the acknowledgement of the different teachers, plural, that you had throughout the years, um, you're almost too good to keep yourself to yourself. So, have you ever thought about a studio?
I, I can genuinely say the thought of I'm too good to keep myself to myself hasn't occurred to me. But as far as a studio is concerned, not yet.
Okay.
However, I have, especially recently in the past couple of years, learned that the things that I kind of borderline take for granted now, because they're muscle memory for me
Okay.
now,
Okay.
are not the same for others.
Okay.
I can hear when someone is straining their voice, and most people
Mm.
can. But what I've realized is a skill that I have of being able to not only hear that they are straining their voice, but where they're straining their voice, where they're holding it, in order to get that sound and be like, okay, you're doing this. Why don't you try holding your voice in this space and explaining it in a way that helps them understand where they're placing their voice?
Okay.
I've learned that that is not as common as I thought it was. So
That's
recently, I have been kind of dabbling in teaching my friends mostly. Um, and I want to get more into like not just my own teachings, but I want to learn more so that way I can teach others, because singing is it's such a beautiful gift, but also it leads into just talking. It leads into confidence in how you project your own voice. And it's so powerful when you know you can do it.
that's
So yes,
right.
I do want to actually teach and become a vocal coach
Okay.
more professionally.
Okay, because it still stands in my mind from years ago when I was in a choir. Her name is Susan Ross. She is still teaching to this day.
Mm,
Brilliant woman. Like she was dripping wet, probably 90 pounds. A woman was, but she knew voice, right? But
mm,
even something so significant as, and it does help you with your speaking as well. But to end, and are you ending on the D and starting with the T, right? Just how you end and start the same one, right? But to always
mhm.
complete a word. You don't want to have, like, let's see, oh, say, can you see by the dawn? You forgot the end in there, right? So you want to completely, or even breathing, right? Where you're supposed to properly breathe, right? We've heard, oh, say, can you see, breathe by the dawn's early light, breathe. And it's no, that's not what it is. It's, oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light? What so proudly we held, right? So where are you supposed to breathe in it all? It makes a difference in how it sounds.
in the pacing, yeah, of the song and everything.
Yes, it does. Okay, so now tell us about how and when you ventured off to being a music producer,
Director, music director.
music director.
Slight difference. But actually, okay, so this is a new venture for me. I
Okay,
started music directing last year. My first venture was in the Panto performance.
okay.
And it was really funny. It just happened. I was a part of Little Shop of Horrors. I was coming out of that, and they had already kind of started their rehearsal process. And I was coming in just to be the actor, the regular actor, because I was already in the show. I was ready to like do the lines, sing my songs, and get up out of there. But we didn't start with a music director at the time. And at I think the one of the first rehearsals that I went to when I was coming back was the director really wanted one of the songs to just have instruments on stage, but not played by the band. Now, what that means, because we are a kids production, we have a lot of different people who don't especially know how to play instruments, trying to figure out how to play instruments. And I realized very quickly in that rehearsal, I was like, okay, if we don't have any organization, we're not going to do or get anywhere with this rehearsal. So I was like, look, here's what we're going to do. We're going to get the kids the percussion instruments because those are easy and they can keep rhythm. And then we're gonna get some of the adults when like there was like a two different groups. We had the Lost Boys because we were doing Peter Pan, and we had the Pirates. Who were on Hook's side. So with the Pirates, we had some deeper, bassier notes, some deeper, bassier instruments. We had like one was a jug, one was a guitar. We had just those deeper, richer sounds were for the Pirates, and then we had the more tinny sounds, the bells, the whistles that were for the Lost Boys. And that was strictly one of the things I was like, if we combine them all together, they make this beautiful sound. But as long as you have a distinct sound between the two, then you can create so much just in the sound. You can create a story. And from that point, literally from that specific rehearsal, my director came up to me and they were like, hey, do you want to be the music director? So yeah, it's been an adventure, and I'm really excited that honestly that was such a blessing, and it was such a challenge, but a welcome one. Uh, I was not ready, but now I've realized, okay, I have so much to grow and so much to learn, even with this new adventure. But also to have the confidence, like I can do this. I didn't even need to like I don't know how to explain it. I didn't have to sell myself to sell that I can do it. It's like someone saw it in me and they're like, "Hey, we need you to do this. Can you do this?" And I was like, "Yes." I just said yes.
That's
So
right.
yeah, that's
But
kind of how it
yeah,
started.
but you also chose to take a positive approach, right? You didn't say, oh, blah, 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 right? You chose to take a positive approach. So a positive result, a positive answer rose up in you, and you decided to move forward with that, right? Because
Yes.
I'm sure, obviously without names, I'm sure you've ran across people in your career, right? In your quest, in your pursuit with your passions, people
Mhm.
who, and that's why I said, what do you speak over yourself? Because that's important. It's important what you speak because you are the hear what you speak. And you're
Mm.
either clothing your mind with what I call negative Nancy comments, or you're going to be positive Priscilla, pinning up all kinds of good promises inside your own mind, right? Um, and so it does make a difference. And so so thank you for doing that. And you know what song came to me is that Christmas song, da na 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 na. Da na 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 na. What sing da 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 da
Carol
da
of the
da da.
Bells.
Yes, that
Yes.
song is just like wow. That's what I think of, like music producer. That song. There's so much movement in it, right? And so
Yep.
one thing I really value, if we think of positive, during that time when we had the unfortunate things here in the Pacific Northwest, we're being filmed from Portland, Oregon area, Portland, Vancouver area. Lydia chose to take a positive approach in encouraging people in the community. So, can you share with viewers what it is that you decided to do and the support system that you had?
Oh, okay. Yes. So one of the dearest memories that I have specifically during COVID was putting together this kind of genuinely just a little small thing. I didn't know if I could ask anyone because we were in COVID, so I didn't want to risk other people. But I knew that at that time there were a lot of older people who weren't able to see their families, and it was about Christmas time. And I knew that because of all of this, people were starting to feel more lonely than probably they had in years. And I just wanted to uplift people in any way that I could. So I put together this little musical thing with some old songs that meant so much to me. And I would put it together with my mom. We would rehearse, and, and she'd give me feedback as to which songs were great and maybe this song should go here, and like all these wonderful things. And then we just went into the Portland area. We had a couple of contacts who were already associated with some of the nursing homes in the area, and we just did a literally just an a cappella thing. Sometimes we would just if our some of the fam woo, some of the friends would allow us, we would sing out front of their door and say, hey, we're going to stop by at this time, and we would just sing to them. And it was all just to kind of give uplift people in this very hard time. Yeah, that's one of the dearest memories for me.
Yeah, and that was you again choosing to take a positive approach, right? Because
Mm.
even seeing that, like, you were genuinely sewn into by your teacher, therefore you want to genuinely sew into others. You know,
Yeah.
before this program began, I was woken up in what I call the night watch to a dream encounter. I was
Mm.
standing in a boardroom, and in the boardroom, out of my mouth came, with conviction, anytime you take your gifts, talents, and abilities and you use them to bless others, it is ministry, right?
Mm.
So I was in a boardroom. The second time I said it with so much conviction, I woke myself up, right? I woke myself up. But that was one of the factors behind this program, right? And so we forget that every single human was created in the image of a marvelous creator. Okay.
Yes.
And so I don't need to go out there and tell any of my leaves, okay, guys, now come on, it's time to start to change to those fall colors. Right? They're just naturally doing what they were created to do, right?
Yes.
And so if you were to look at viewers right now, okay, where do I want to put you? Carnegie Hall. Okay? I want to put you in Carnegie Hall.
Okay.
And you have the whole auditorium is full of students in seventh grade.
Mm.
And then there's students pulled in from other areas that have undergone some extreme tragedies in their life.
Mm.
Okay? What are you going to speak over these impressionable young minds?
Whew. Oh my goodness. Okay. I would probably I would say keep going. It's always going to get better. But also Be aware of your community. Be aware of who you surround yourself with. Be aware of who you allow to influence you. Be aware of what you listen to. Be aware of the things that you consume, not just like with food, but with television, with music, with dancing, even. Be aware, have your mind on. You don't, we don't always want to admit that sometimes the things that are popular are not always good. Um, it's important to, even when you're listening to something and it has an awesome beat, pay attention to the words. Pay attention to what you're allowing yourself to recite, because it will slowly influence who you are as a person, and decide who you want to be. You don't have to have you don't have to be them right now, but decide what are the key factors that when people describe you, or when you describe yourself, or when you show up in the heavenly gates and God describes you, what are
Mm-hmm.
the key things that you want to be known for that are just a part of you? For me, it's kindness, patience, honestly, a lot of patience.
Wait a minute. And how are patients grown? Yay!
There you go.
Stretching.
But yeah, yeah. So being aware of what you allow yourself to consume will shape you into who you want to be, and it's never too late to do it.
Mm. That
Yeah.
is really good. That is really good advice. And it sparks a memory in me when I was that age, right? And the memory was my mom told me, first of all, I had one of those moms who said, "Oh, you just let me know if you're going to do A, B, D, and C, and we'll go out there and get you whatever it is that you need," and all this other kind of stuff, right? But then my
Hmm.
mom, in her wise self, she would say things like this, Sean, anything you do in high school, the very next day, everybody's going to know. And that was like, well, I'm not going to do any of those things my mom gave me permission to do because I don't want to be associated with those things, right? It was like reverse psychology, right? And I even remember I had gone on a date with this young man, right? And we were hanging out in front of his house, just doing the kiss thing, right? And he was trying to invite me to come in. I'm not naming that boy, right? He was trying to invite me to come in, but I knew don't let the hands go anywhere, right? The hands just don't go anywhere. But I just, in my mind was, everybody in school will know the next day. And that was enough for me to say, now, was I late going home? Did I get my car taken away from me? Yes, because my mom had to show me there was consequences for everything, right? But I knew not to go into that young man's house because I did not want to be associated with that. Okay. One thing I like what you shared is it's never too late to restart. Okay. And so if we think, tell us about, or okay, you gave us that example in when you went to
Mhm.
audition where you were a sophomore in high school, right? But also
Mhm.
tell us of perhaps maybe, and you don't have to say a name, okay? Perhaps maybe you started a production and after starting it, you thought, I'm not sure I want to be associated with this particular production. Do you have any of those to recount?
Ooh, kinda. I do.
Okay.
I had to think about it for a minute, because one of my biggest things is I try not to go for productions I'm not enthusiastic about.
Okay.
But I do have one where I was enthusiastic about working with the production, and I'm definitely not going to name it.
Okay.
Um, and I was excited to kind of play a different side of characters than I'm used to. And it was a serious play. So I was just excited to even work on that as well. And as we were rehearsing, as we were kind of going through the like unveiling the
Okay.
character and like starting to understand, the more and more I rehearsed, the more and more out of touch I felt with this specific character. And not
Mm.
just that, but also the show itself. This is from a very well-known writer.
Mm-hmm.
I was ecstatic to work on one of their projects. It's just as I was working on it, I realized I'm not sure I'm going to be able to connect with this specific character. And then on top of that, it didn't seem like the questions that I was asking, it didn't seem like they were getting answered to a way that I was going to come with understanding to this character. And with it being such a serious show, if I don't understand the character, that means that I have to rely on technique. It means that I have to rely on just bare minimum to get the character out. And that can be useful. I'm sure the
Mm-hmm.
production would have been great. It's just I know that technique is not the only thing that connects and speaks to people's hearts. And if I couldn't bring that to the table, then people would look at this character and be like, "Oh yeah, she was fine." But they wouldn't be able to understand some of the choices this character made, the decisions and motivations of this character, which is very important to understand the overarching theme of the show. So, needless to say, I was kind of okay when it didn't end up going up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. And it makes me think, Lydia, it's almost like math. Okay, what you explained is almost like math. You can't, if you're learning a math concept, in order to get to C, you have to understand A and B. You can't just skim past A and B and then come to the conclusion of C, right? And so it
Yes.
kind of builds on it, right? And so understanding fully what it is that enriches the character. Okay, and I could say this and it won't embarrass him for one single second, but my husband's favorite program is Little House on the Prairie, right?
Mhm.
And think about tested, tried, and made it through history, right? That is
Mhm.
Little House on the Prairie because people fell in love with Charles Ingle, right? And his fatherly, kind, disciplined self, right? And
Yes.
just, or you think of the Mountain Men or Rocky, or you think of all these different things, right, that have just stayed around because of the impact that it's made really on society, right? Or if I think,
Mhm.
how many times have I seen Sandlot, right? Watched it all the time with my kids and then turn around to my grandkids. It's like, come on, let's watch Sandlot, right? Just a great movie. Um, so have you ever thought about wanting to produce a musical?
I mean, yes. Yes, I have.
Okay.
Absolutely. There are a couple, there are a list of ones that not only I would want to produce, but also would want to direct. I might have to get some help with choreography, but that's okay. Yeah, no, there are definitely one of the biggest ones, if I may share,
Yes.
is Aida.
Okay.
It's a Broadway musical. I think it's actually under Disney, or at least the Disney Corporation. And it's about this Nubian princess who is taken captive by the Egyptian captain of the guard. And it ends up in this honestly heart wrenching love triangle of sorts, um, where the Pharaoh's daughter is in love with the captain of the guard, and they are betrothed. They are to be wed by the end of the story. No, they're supposed to be wed
Okay.
eventually.
Okay. Okay.
But what ends up happening is the captain of the guard is enamored with the Nubian princess. And I don't believe at the beginning of the show he knows that she's the Nubian princess. I don't think that comes out until much, much later. Um, but then also on top of that, the Nubian princess becomes genuine friends with the pharaoh's daughter, and they're all like why doesn't he love me? And the Nubian princess is like, I have a duty. I love this man, but also I need to save my people who are captive. And it's so heart-wrenching and so beautiful. And the music is amazing. Yeah, that would be the one I do. That would be the one.
Ah. Or, of course, if there's one that's going to, I love the night watch, okay? Because if we think of lights, right? Probably everybody on the face of the earth could raise their hand and say, oh, we have benefited from Edison, right?
Okay. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because that's where
Mm-hmm.
the light bulb came from Edison, right? So we have
Yes.
all benefited from Edison, right? And you know, have you visualized yourself in the director's chair? Have you
Yeah.
visualized yourself? Have you visualized yourself when the list of individuals in a movie come at the end or come up at the beginning? Have you visualized your name up there?
Ooh, okay. I haven't tried that exercise, but I have kind of seen, like, I had a dream where I was just the director's chair. It said director Lydia Fleming. And I don't even know if it was a movie or if it was for stage, but it was exciting to think about. And especially recently, that dream, that thought is becoming more and more solidified in my mind and in my heart. And I'm just like, I really want to be a director. And I really
Mm-hmm.
would be a good director.
That's right. That's right. And what color is your director's chair?
Oh, well, I mean, it's the standard black panel on the back with the wood
Okay.
and the seats.
Okay.
Yeah, it's all that. It's the
Okay.
very stereotypical director chair.
Okay. So let me tell you why I asked you that. So I just interviewed somebody who has her PhD in psychology, and
Mm,
she shared that the brain does not know the difference between imagination and reality.
I have heard that.
Yeah. So now I want you to think of this, and I want our viewers to think of this as well, okay? Because the basis for our program is actually to stimulate the creative mind, right?
Mm,
Just to stimulate the creative mind, and that's why we pull questions out of you to speak directly to our audience to empower them, right? Or you get a
mhm,
breakdown how you partnered with what was going on in your mind, right? And so if we think of this, okay, so the creator is not some tyrant dictator
mm.
who is up in heaven like I'm thinking of Little Mermaid and the king in Little Mermaid, right?
Mhm,
And with his pokey staff, okay, and so that's not the creator. Okay,
mm,
so if you look at the smile upon Lydia's face, right? If we think of joy, if we think of creation, if we think of
mm,
peas and pears and apples and grapes and beets and cauliflower and cumin and curry and salt and pepper and coriander and oregano or basil, right?
mhm,
Or if we think of,
mhm,
you name it, or if we think of pearls or jasper or diamonds or rubies or emeralds, right? Or sapphires. If we think of all the many facets to creation, right? Um, and we think of all the different personalities of humans that are created in the
mm,
image of the creator that created all these amazing things, right? It's he smiles when we are functioning in our creative self. He wants to bless us. He wants us to be excited about life. He doesn't want it to be like, no, I want you to go sit and do okay, true transparency. You raised a stack of sons, and they'll have you watch movies like Napoleon Dynamite with the tots or something,
Mm.
right? But I'm thinking of another, out there movie that I had to or was subjected to with my kids one time, Biodome, right? And
Oh.
there's a scene in Biodome with Pauly Shore or something where they were like, we're not worthy, right? Well, that's not the creator. He's not
Hmm.
like, you will worship me. No. So when we are out there in our vivacious selves, walking out what I like to classify as pure creativity,
Mm.
right? We're in
Mhm.
alignment. We are in alignment. We don't need to think, oh gosh, I can't do that, because I could become too famous and that would just be wrong. And, I just have to have fake humility. No, he wants us to succeed, right? He wants us to succeed because think of this, who doesn't like to watch a good movie, right? Who isn't touched by the hills or alive by the sound of music, right? With
Mhm.
Julie Andrews, everybody was touched by that.
Mhm.
Do you know? Okay, let's talk about Disney for a second, right? Do
Okay.
you know that the year Bambi was released, Bambi,
Mhm.
hunting was down 90%.
Oh,
It,
wow.
influence, influence,
Mhm.
right? Influence. because
Exactly.
because the screen's influence. And so I would just encourage you to pay attention to what happens in the night watch, right? Because you, through excitement, could see yourself, um, you know walking out a musical for something
Mm.
that came through the mind of another.
Oh.
But something that comes through your mind is one of a kind, right? Um, so I like to tell people, anytime a thought comes your direction, a pure thought,
Mm.
uh, if you would just say, oh, wow, that's fascinating, Lord, I come into agreement with that. Show me more.
Oh,
Show
I
me
like
more.
that.
Show me more. Right? And because, unfortunately, in society, probably globally, um, I need a visual. These are going to be kids, okay? Make sure I'm not showing anybody's information. Um, if Johnny is told, no, Johnny, this is how you're supposed to stand, just like this, and Sally is
Mhm.
told, nope, 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 this is exactly how you have to be, right? And
Mhm.
Rachel is told, oh, can't do this, and Shantae is told, what are you doing skipping over there? Would you just stand in line, right? And
Mm.
Roberto is told, Roberto, come on, quit, hugging everybody, right?
Mm.
So it's almost like we are trained, I'm going to call it unfortunately, to step outside of our creative self, to stop being our creative self, and just be these little, don't move, don't move, don't move, don't
Mhm.
move, don't move. And in essence, snuff creativity and hinder future generational inventions from coming.
I agree. I agree with that wholeheartedly. And it's not just like to stop and stand rigidly. From my personal experience, I've learned that it's also to only move the way you are told to move, which
Hmm.
might in turn be exactly the opposite of how you want to naturally move. And so, unfortunately, you might end up struggling, and because those moves are not natural to you, what you want to do is something
Hmm.
completely different, but you keep being told not to do that. You have to move like someone else tells you to move, and then you struggle and you feel like you're lost, or you feel like you're being left behind because these moves are not natural, but other people seem to be doing just fine. Or at least someone's telling you that these moves are easy to do. And it turns out, no, it's only for that type of person. And there's a space for your movements. There's a space for how you want to move. And in fact, there might be someone who feels exactly the way you do and like
Mm.
might need you to move the way you move to help them to move the way they move. It's creativity sparks creativity. And it's beautiful when it all comes into harmony. It can be a little messy too. It can be a little messy too, but golly, is it worth it when it all comes into harmony?
That's right. And you just brought to the surface. I saw a vision today. Um, I got to double dip today, so I was in two services today, just pouring love over here and then pouring love over here. And
Mm,
in the first service, when I was pouring love, through just wanting everybody in the environment to be blessed, I saw a vision, and the vision was all of these. It was like almost looked like I was looking at this space where there was hills everywhere, and then the hills went down into a valley almost like a punch bowl, and there was lights everywhere, and the lights represented the light of life that was inside of humans. Okay, and as each of these humans chose to light their own light, right, and just be their expressive self, right, I then saw what looked like the cruise ship, Princess Cruises, how they have this
mhm,
wave looking thing on it, right? It's just it almost looks like a woman's hair, and her hair goes
mhm,
back, right? And I just saw like this creativity, right? So then there were sparks that were coming from all this creativity, right? And it was like, wow, what are you showing me? Right? And it was just people living out vivaciously their self, right? So
yeah.
I sometimes I like to look, okay, so this is for everybody. Next time you look at a school bus, like kids standing at a school bus, right? This
Mm,
is precious. Little boys, you will see go over and like roughhouse with another one, because that's their love language of affection, right? And the little girls will be talking, or have a doll or whatever, right? And I'm not gender restricting kids, but it is obvious. You see it, right?
mhm,
You just see it. You just see kids just being kids, right?
mm,
Um, and I think that um, even what you said, when you walk out your creativity, you're actually encouraging others to do the same thing. The same
yeah.
thing. And when you, just like your teacher saw you and genuinely was able to speak into your life, right? And then
Yeah.
she turned around and you turned around and are emanating the nuggets that she sowed into you, right?
Mhm.
Then you will turn around and do that in in um, in public or in private settings. And gosh, do we not need that in the world,
We do.
right? To just bless, and let's be real. If you use your voice, give us an example without names of where you used your voice to speak positive fuel into another, and then you watch that person propel into society.
Oh, ooh, ooh. Oh gosh. I will admit, I don't have a story where I see them like propel into society,
Okay?
but I do have a story where I spoke and this person they've been going through quite a lot. Nothing to sneeze at for sure.
Okay?
And it hurt me to know where they were at that time, but I was so grateful that they had reached out, and I just told them every part of the truth that I could, specifically uplifting truth. They had been
Mm,
struggling with some very negative self-talk obviously, but also just some things that plain weren't true. It's like they had forgotten who they were. And this is a dear friend of mine at the time, and I was like, none of this is true. I can give you examples, and I did give examples of ways that the thoughts that were in their head at that time were not true of who they actually are. And they tried to debate me, and I was like, that also isn't true, because you told me this, you told me this, you told me specific things of who are your core self that is not living up to what you're saying right now. So I'm going to say,
Mm,
this isn't right. And then I just
mm,
reassured them. Told them what I see in them. I told them how I view who they are. And I do know in that moment, it brought them comfort. And I do know for quite a couple of months afterwards, it brought them comfort. They were able to reassure themselves and know that the things that were happening in their head weren't quite right. And then they made steps to address some of the things that were happening in their head. And I was like, yay, yay. And I'm still
yes.
praying for them. I'm still like hope rooting for them. They are a dear friend of mine even to this day. So I'm looking forward to like finishing the rest of this story and seeing them propel into society.
That's right. That's right. Because it is more blessed to give than it is to receive. It truly is. You know,
Yes.
I always like to say, I just get to stand there and watch what the Lord's doing as He just reaches out to love on other people. I remember when I first came to Oregon, um, it was a 4th of July weekend, and we didn't have plans. I didn't have plans. I was a single mom, didn't have plans, and I was so sad. And this is before cell phones. This is before caller ID. This is before redial, right? Um, and I remember the Lord spoke to me and He said, Sean, you get your little phone book and you start to call people and encourage them because you know me. There are people that do not know me. You call and encourage people. And I did. And I'll never forget the joy. And that was in the midst of feeling, beat up, right? Because I didn't have plans to take my
Mhm.
kids to, right? I felt beat up. And it was just such a blessing to, I don't know, it was just beautiful. It was beautiful to just pour love over somebody else and to see the effect of pouring love over somebody else. And I, in return, was encouraged, you know?
Yeah. Oh,
So I
yes.
just I just thank you so much, and we've got about another 3 minutes. So what is something that you don't want to stop the interview and say, oh wow, I really wanted to share that?
Ooh, I don't think I had anything. I
Okay.
feel bad.
No, 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 no.
uh,
You should feel good. You should feel good. Not bad, good. Okay.
yeah.
So I would just like to speak to all of our viewers that it's so, it's important that when you function as yourself, there's no competition ever because there's only one of
Yes.
you. There's only
Yes.
one of you. There's only one of you. There's nobody else who is going to sound, respond, articulate, um, uh, communicate, resonate, relate, the way there's
Yeah.
only one of you. So I would just encourage all the believers, be the very best version of you, right? I
Yes.
grew up making forts, right? One of my favorite forts I ever made was out of fern leaves on Harstein Island with one of my childhood friends, right? But it was always
Mhm.
the next fort was going to be better and bigger, right? And so if we take Lydia Fleming's words, there's always a restart.
Yes.
And so, would you like to spend a moment and just bless all of our viewers?
Oh, yes. Ah, Father God, I thank you for this opportunity to talk to Miss Shawn and talk to the viewers who are listening today. Lord God, I ask that you speak to the hearts of each and every person who is listening today and open their eyes and open their hearts to the vision that you have for their life. Let them see that not only are they worthy of it, but you have called them to have it. It's already theirs. Lord God,
Mm-hmm.
there's nothing that can stop them from it except if they
Mm-hmm.
choose not to. All they have to do is reach out and grab it. So, Lord God, I ask that you open their hearts, open their minds, and give them the joy of your creation that you have embedded in them already. So, Lord God, just bless each and every one of them. Each and every one of them. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
And I just want to encourage viewers that even if you're not, quote unquote, a religious person, even if you don't follow Jesus, can you take the words that Lydia Fleming shared and can you just receive them? Receive being blessed. So thank you so much for coming on today. What a
Thank
delight.
you.
So for all of our viewers, in the body of this video, you will be able to find out how to keep in touch with Lydia Fleming and to see all of her future engagements. If anybody would like to professionally reach out to her, you can contact me and I can forward that information to you. Um, but thank you once again, Lydia. I just
Thank you.
what a delight. I got to meet Lydia, and she's came and she has performed and done beautiful things for us, and I've seen her in action, and it's just been a blessing. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And to all of our viewers, I want to thank you for coming on. And until our next episode of Sagionic 1027, may the Lord bless you. May the Lord keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon thee always. Blessings. Bye.
Blessings.